for what people want to build and the people who are building it. And the miscommunication or the misunderstandings between people who are asking for capabilities and people who are delivering it is symbolized in cartoons like this, well, we're getting it all wrong. Okay, we just are getting all these misunderstandings happening until we finally talk to someone, perhaps face to face, perhaps not, and we get it right. You know, this is what the customer wanted. But not going through all the rework and all of the churn of building it 6 times. You know, build it right the first time. Okay? So, this is one company that I came across who they said, hey, our CFO is asking us some really hard questions because we've been doing Agile. This is a company called Follett Software in McHenry, Illinois, outside of Chicago. And they decided to drink the Agile XP Kool-Aid, as they said. I mean, lock, stock, and barrel. The problem they had before was that their releases were taking too long and the bugs were too high. Okay? So they wanted to be able to shrink it down and zero out the defects, lower the defects. So they build applications that basically the Amazon.com e-commerce for school systems, K through 12, for all kinds of educational media, books, videos, you know, lesson plans, all this sort of stuff that just moves materials through our nation's schools. And they do it through a product line called Destiny. You know, so they were doing a product line transition, and they said to their engineers and their team members, don't go anywhere. We're going to switch to this different approach of building software, and we want you to stay, even though you're worried from hearing rumors that the CFO just says, send it all to India. Okay? So they said, we're going to go about reorganizing our teams and following this approach. Now, what I found fascinating about this place when I walked around was the energy of the people. All right? When you bring people together, like when we bring people together here, there's a different kind of energy out there, here, you know, talking during the breaks than if we were all on a conference bridge. And so they believed in co-location. So the first of these 3 case studies is an XP example where it's primarily co-location. The second is Scrum teams spread across 4 cities and a couple of continents. And then the third is a little company that is based out here, and we collected some data from them too, and I'll hold on who they are until I get to them. But this is Follett Software, the team that works together, plays together. This is Kim Wheeler, who is the team lead. I mean, she oversaw this entire transformation. They had to retool their rooms, their environment, workstations, everything. She's smiling because she loves to be a part of this measurement project where we're going to get data. By the way, as part of writing for Cutter, I like to do things in agile iterations and bursts. There's a report that Kim contributed to that is right here. It's called How Agile Projects Measure Up and What This Means to You. And what I'm going to share with you in this case study is in this report. A bonus for being here today is if you are interested in this, shoot me an email. Normally it's a couple $100 to get this report, or a few thousand if you're a subscriber, but I'll give it to you for free, right? And I'll send you the PDF. Or drop a card. Either way, and we'll get it out to you. So Kim was interested in seeing how their XP releases behaved. It was a whole different way of working. One giant room called the Destiny room. People working close together, pair programmers side by side. No overtime. 40-hour work weeks. Avoid burnout. A lot of the Kent Beck ideas that were put into actual practice. I asked them, I said, who coached you? How did you do this? And they said, we did it ourselves, which blew me away. So I really wanted to know how their projects were behaving. The interesting thing that I noticed was everyone had pictures of their families right near their monitors. Because at the end of the day, after working hard in one big room, they wanted to go home to the kids, and they wanted to be able to do homework with the kids and have dinner with their families and enjoy life and come back in the next day reinvigorated. You know, they heard stories about conference calls with offshore teams where people had to work at 8 o'clock at night because it's 8 o'clock in the morning in India. And they said, this is what we're competing against. All right? We want to be able to work and have a normal life. It's noisy. You have clusters, molecules, fundamental elements, two pair programmers, and a person who's a business analyst or a user or a user proxy. And so the two programmers are literally doing instant code reviews. When one's tired, the other picks it up. When the other's tired, the other picks it up. They're constantly looking at the code. They write code really efficiently, no waste. So this idea that programmers just like to cut and paste and throw all kinds of crap in their code, no, they wrote as little lines of code as you had to make the functionality and do it right. And with iteration planning meetings and iteration retrospectives and daily stand-ups, they were making sure that they were communicating short feedback loops with the people who were asking for the features, the stories. Is this what you wanted? And with active listening techniques, they said, I heard you say this, and I thought, this is the way I interpret it, and this is what we did, and a very short feedback loop. A lot of instant mentoring among the teams. So experienced team members can immediately interact with people face-to-face, with younger junior people. So knowledge spread around really quickly. I mean, domain knowledge just moved around this room. Domain knowledge wasn't the only thing that moved around the room. If somebody got the flu, everyone got the flu. So a nickname for this room also was called the Destiny Petri dish. So, there were some interesting things that they had to do. They had to practice hygiene, hand sanitizers. You can't share a keyboard. Or if you're sick, stay home. Some really fundamental practices that were more management challenges and not technical challenges. So what's interesting about this is it requires managers to do the job that they have to do, which is manage people. Again, pictures of photos of family, a lot of buzz going around, and instant answers to questions. If you have a split team offshore and you got to get an answer, you might send an email over there and then wait 12 hours. Here, instant short response, because there's no long feedback loop. It's a short feedback loop. Ping pong for breaks, and it's a bummer for the person who's sitting here. It gets a little noisy. So people think, I got to get out of this spot. This is just way too noisy. But it was an interesting environment when people were asked, compared to what we used to do, where everyone was isolated in their little offices and in cubicles with walls and nobody can, communicate with me, which would you rather have? And people said, I'd never go back to the old way. All right, ping pong noise and everything, right? It just felt like a high energy room. So we wanted to find out, how does this really look from a project perspective? When they build a release, let's sketch it out. Let's do some measurement work. Let's interview teams, collect data. Let's go up to the board. Highest bandwidth of communication. Alistair Coburn said this when I was with him at a conference. Are two people talking at a whiteboard. So we would get this information by talking at a whiteboard and sketching out. When you started the story phase, how many people were on the project, and how long did they bang out all those stories through? When was the first iteration? How many people on the iteration? How long did you go? How many iterations? What was the velocity at each iteration? If we accumulate the velocity and look at the total number of stories that the team built, that's the fruits of their labor. How good was it at the end when you were doing the final rounds of testing in that last part of the relay race before you shipped? When you shipped, how clean was the code post-production? Did you get people screaming that it was crappy and buggy like crazy? Or did people say, man, there's 0 defects? So what was that? So we collect this information into a database. SLIM stands for Software Lifecycle Management. And metrics is the benchmarking part of a tool, an instrument that our company invented to do this instant comparison. Are you better, faster, cheaper against industry stats? And then we plot up trend line views that might be a graph of, say, defects. So larger projects on the right that were old waterfall projects in blue, how do they plot against a trend line that shows the defects found during integration testing before delivery? Is it above the line, which is more defects, or is it below the line? The agile projects, which are the red dots, and they are shorter iterations, so they're more on the left, fewer stories, fewer numbers of requirements or features or less code, how do they compare against that center trend line? Are they above the line, more defects, or are they below? So to be a metrics analyst, all you have to do is count the dots and see if they're above or below a line. That's it. And you can be a consultant and stand up here in front of all these smart people and just report. Just report. So we collect up the data in something called Data Manager, which is a template that allows us to collect waterfall, agile, package, maintenance, new development projects into one giant bucket. So we have 8,000 projects in this giant bucket. We use the same template. When we go into an agile team, we say, let's collect up 4 or 5 of yours and then compare it against the 8,000. Then we do these benchmark studies here. There are other models that we've built that can take velocity and in real time, like GPS navigation, do an instant estimated time of arrival forecasting for the end of the release. That's something called Slim Control. And we also have a release planning model that can say, hey, based on your patterns from the past, you've got a big release coming up. Let's do some simulations to figure out how much you can do inside that time frame. And that's the end of the Slim commercial. But we're using this model, which we actually furnished to people who want to measure on their own. And we did that for this case study. So we collected up these 4 essential metrics. Time, when did it start, when did it finish? Effort, how many people on a team? And if there are 10 people on a team for 6 months, it's 10 person months of effort times 6, or 60 person months. We figure out how much functionality, how much software size was actually built by the team, how many stories, how many story points in that period of time. And then we find out the defects. Now this is the raw data, size, time, effort, defects. That's all you need to know. Count on one hand what measures matter. That's it. And you can derive a 5th metric. We wrote a book called 5 Core Metrics. And the 5th is a derived measure. So it's a productivity level of a team. So if you build software really fast with low effort, you would expect this index to be up. If you slipped your schedules and things took a lot longer and you burned a whole lot of effort and churned and burned up a lot of dollars, then that index would go down. So we also calculate that. It's interesting when you build software fast, but you spend a lot of money. There's like a cancellation effect. And it's also interesting when you use a really small team and take your time, and you have low cost and low effort, but you took longer schedule. Then there's a cancellation effect there. So we can see these things. Is the bar both down, both up, or either way? So we go up to a whiteboard, and pardon my scribbly handwriting, I don't know if you can make it out, but this is the release 5.0 for the Destiny project. A couple of engineers here, people building stories or doing all the story definition, which they did for the entire 5.5 months of this release, starting in mid-December, wrapping up at the end of June. And when January began, that's when iteration 1 started to start building the code that implemented the stories. They went, 20 some odd people for 3 months, and then added 6 more folks and went another 3.5 months. So during that whole period of six months for the build, they had between 20 and 26 people. So you'd say, to build this amount of functionality, 83 user stories, story points from 1 to 7, so the harder stories got a 6, the easier ones got a 2. They had 252 story points, so that's the size of what the team produced. And the goodness of it was measured by the bug counts, or the bug rates. How much bug burn down did they have in that final lap of the relay race? And that number initially was 200. After they looked at it, they said, no, we double counted, we cleaned it up, it's more like 120. So that's it. Took that information, dropped it into our template, put in all that. I immediately was able to look in the lower right-hand corner. They didn't know this, but there's an index here called the productivity index. My eyes popped. I said, whoa, 23. Normally I see 18s. So this is a big deal. But I didn't say that yet. So the question that you would have with this is you could say, if they built this much software in 6 months, how long does it take for the rest of the world to build a similar amount of functionality? Quick answer, it's more like 10. And when we found and fixed 120 bugs during testing, like Kent Beck says, if we build software and have fewer bugs, then we're successful. So what's that number supposed to be? About double in industry. So they're building it like 4 months